Well, good morning, Mr. Hunt.
Good morning.
We have a few quick questions for you,
Okay.
and maybe you can help us with some explanations of things.
Okay.
How long have you been an active practitioner in Nevada?
I have been licensed in the state of Nevada for over 33 years.
The last candidate asked a question about, I don't know how legislative things work and I don't know how legal things work, but I know that some state boards, dental boards, don't have administrative code that go along with their Practice Act. We do. How does the administrative code come about?
Well, I think that what's important, and I was going to, although the board is familiar with me, I think for the public record, a little, history so that
Sure.
everyone knows who I am. There's misconceptions. I wanted to kind of put that on the record. From a family of 6 kids, neither one of my parents graduated from high school. I graduated in New Hampshire. I came to Nevada in 1976. I was in the United States Air Force. I was discharged, an honorable discharge as a sergeant in the United States Air Force. Went to undergraduate school at University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Graduated in accounting. I worked at the Gaming Control Board as an auditor. Went to law school at the University of San Diego on scholarship. I then worked in the United States Senate and began my legal career in 1983. I worked for a gentleman called Mort Ghislaine. We did some of the highest profile cases in the history of Nevada. Wayne Newton, NBC, was one of them. I started my own practice and became a partner in 1988. Was a partner ever since. Worked as a partner also in the firm of Fox Rothschild. Also, again, now my present situation. And I've been in every court in Nevada, and I've done everything from track school to being admitted to the United States Supreme Court. I did want to say for the record that one of the things that's very important, whoever you choose in this process, and it's been a great honor to represent the board, is that they understand that they're here to protect the public, that the due process of the licensee is critical in that process to make sure that they are protected under the Constitution and the laws of the state of Nevada. That this due process obviously ensures that the licensees are treated fairly when they are represented before the board. I think that it's also imperative that the board pick somebody who also understands that it's not just discipline. There's a number of things that as general counsel that you're responsible for. I always have said it was like tending the herd. You have to know the history of the board. You have to do examinations at one time were a big part of the board. We're overseeing that now through the statutory process. And we also have then rulemaking, very important, because that leads to your question. I'm sorry, it took me a little while to get there, but in Nevada we have a statutory scheme. Statutes govern the laws in the state of Nevada, and also those statutes usually allow for the boards to implement the rules on the implementation of a statute. It's critical to know that you can never implement a rule that trumps a statute. So in Nevada, that regulatory process, so if they said the board is in charge to, judge someone's fitness for character, then normally the board, through the rulemaking process, initiates rules that would implement what that means and how to enforce the statutory provisions. Also regarding statutory provisions, at least the board's policy, is the board has long stated that they're here to implement policy, not to create it. They're here to implement the policy created by the legislature. And generally that means that through the legislative process, the board has recently at least limited its input to just fiscal impacts. Policy is decided by the citizens of Nevada, the legislators, and special interest groups.
So administrative code, this book, did somebody write this? Did the legislature write this?
The administrative code, originally...
That's the rules for the statute, right?
Right, exactly. How did it come about?
Yeah.
As you know, I've been representing the board for approximately 26 years. I think when I started, that rule book had 3 pages. Over the course of time, the board, through the rulemaking process, implemented these rules. So the rules are a way to implement the statutes. The statutes govern, and these rulemakings, a good example is the statute allows for the board to charge a maximum of X dollars for licensure fees, right? Well, in the regulations, then it identifies how those fees are to be, administered and charged. It's that type of dynamic. A good example was in the past, there was a licensee who allowed a non-licensed dentist. And I also forgot, it's not only rulemaking and discipline, it's also the board has the obligation to prevent unlicensed practice of dentistry, which over the last years, to my knowledge, the Nevada State Board of Dental Examiners is one of the few people that go in and get injunctions to stop the illegal practice. So that's another thing. But a good example of rulemaking is like unprofessional conduct. The statute has a statute that says it's unprofessional conduct. Well, we had a situation where an unlicensed dentist was practicing, and the dentist that was charged, which this is public record, said, well, there's nothing in the statute that says that. So the regulation now states that you must verify licensure before, whether you're an independent contractor or an owner of dental practice, you must verify licensure of any person before you allow them to work in a capacity of his employee. And that's in the regulation. And that's an example of how the regulations really assist the board in implementing the statutes that are created by the legislature.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes. Just to be transparent, that we have selected a series of questions that we ask each candidate, and each candidate's been asked the same questions.
Okay.
And so this may be a little bit redundant for you with your background. However, in order of fairness and public record, I'm going to ask you the same questions. And if you could tell me what number of the statute pertains to dentistry in the state of Nevada?
631.
All right. And if a disciplinary screening officer has an issue with the case regarding a root canal therapy, and he would seek, if he chooses to seek a specialist to help him or advise him in the matter, in a root canal therapy, what is the most likely specialist he would give a call to?
Endodontist.
All right, thank you. And one of the board's counsel's positions is to provide legal counsel to board staff. And what do you believe that would entail?
Well, I think that there's lots of times there's day-to-day issues regarding maybe a question on an application, maybe a question as to a given contract the board is currently in. There's multiple things that also the way the process is set, with the disciplinary screening monitors and things of that nature, infection control, if someone's out on a infection control inspection, and there's questions as to whether or not certain things apply or not. Lots of times, although there'll be questions as to the applicability of a given law, although we've always, we let people know that although the law states this, if you are a licensee or an applicant, you can ask for an advisory opinion. So it covers, a multitude of things.
All right. Thank you very much.
I'm going to continue the questions that I've asked in the past. Our board, obviously the governor appoints us. We're charged with protecting the public. We're charged with, licensing dentists, and I think we've been doing a good job with that. So tell me what you know, and keep it brief, please, about the Las Vegas Dental Association.
I think what's important on the Las Vegas Dental Association, every individual has a right to free speech under the First Amendment of the Constitution. And I think that it's important, as we stated earlier, that every licensee's due process is protected under the Constitution and the laws that are afforded them. For the board not to do that would be actually a basis for somebody to have an action against the board. I will tell you, in 26 years of representing the board, no one has ever no one, to my knowledge, has ever made a claim to the district court that the process in which the board currently has implemented is, flawed. As a matter of fact, there's a letter from the Attorney General which vetted our process not too long ago. But I think it's important that groups, no matter who they are, no matter how they're affiliated together, they have a right, and they have a right to try to affect policy through the political process, which, to my understanding, that's what they are attempting to do.
And since we asked candidate number one, we'll ask Mr. Hunt, do you have any known affiliation with any organization that is not recognized by the ADA in dentistry?
No, in fact, I've been the general counsel for the entire country of the American Association of Dental Boards.
Thank you.
One last question. Hypothetically, we have a complaint come in, we do our thing, and it comes down to the last hearing, and it's kind of like there's not a preponderance of evidence either way. And so, in your heart, would you side with the professional or with the public?
I think that what's important to note there is that it's not siding with anyone. It's applying the law, a preponderance of the evidence, right? And at the preponderance of the evidence. Now, I think that if you're asking me, does the board, I also sit as a pro tem judge in Muni Court and Justice Court. You look at someone's book of work, so the board can consider, right, whether or not. But always remember, no matter what, the due process of the licensee is as critical as making sure that you protect the public's interest. The board's here to protect the public. And sometimes, as even in the history of my representation of the board, I've on more than one occasion told the board that what they did not want to hear, which means that I felt that the public's interest, even though board members may have had differing opinions on that, was more important, because I have always felt that my first duty, right, is to the public, then to the licensees to make sure their due process is protected. If they would like to proceed to a full board hearing, they have every right to do that. If they want to try to resolve it, because as you know, the Attorney General's office, there's a policy that you try to remediate cases. The board, and I've said this 1,000 times, whether it's here, whether it's in the press, the board's here to be remedial. The board is not here to be punitive, right? And therefore, what we're trying to do, at least from my perspective as being the prosecutor, is make sure that people, the amount of remediation is the least intrusive as possible. And that's been the policy. That's how the board, over time, created corrective actions instead of having discipline to give the licensees an opportunity. That was all developed over the course of 26 years. And I can tell you that that process has now been implemented and kind of copied by a number of states that have sought my counsel on how to be the least intrusive on a licensee, and how the board's obligation to protect the public, but also due process, and to take the appropriate, least intrusive remedial measure possible when dealing with a licensee.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
No.
Do you have questions of us?
No.
Our committee is going to make a recommendation for the next board meeting.
Right. And again, I think in closing, regardless what the board does, I have always said that, even though I may have had a contract in the past, I have always made it clear that I served at the will of the board. It's been a great honor and privilege, and I believe that in my heart, for 26 years, working with what I think is the most incredible board staff in the United States of America, and also our counsel that we have from the Attorney General's office, this board has done nothing but absolutely 100% in sincerity try to protect the public, protect the licensees, and try to do it in a manner that was remedial and not punitive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another